It's the Pikey and Loughz Show, Talking Taipans. With Chris Pike and Alex Loughton come to you with everything that is 100% Taipans. Let's go. It's Talkin Taipans.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show, the second show we've put together here for 2020. We're here to talk all about the Cairns Taipans. The show's called Talkin Taipans. I'm your co-host Chris Pike, and boy, once again, haven't the Taipans given us plenty to talk about. They split their games last weekend against the Sydney Kings on the road after a really, really important home win against the New Zealand Breakers. They still sit in third position on the NBL ladder. There's only 5 weeks now of the season to go, so there's plenty to talk about once again this week, and let's hear from the men that you all have tuned in for. Alex Loughton, thanks for joining me once again.
Mate, great to be back for our second episode for 2020. Huge ramifications from this weekend, Pikey. So much to talk about. I can't wait. Let's get it started. This episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show proudly brought to you by Cairns Total Physio. Less pain, more life.
Absolutely. This game, Saturday night, Cairns Convention Centre, Adelaide 36ers. It could very well end up determining which of these two teams makes the playoffs. So plenty to dissect from that. So we'll get to that shortly. Now, first of all, back to last Thursday night to tip off the round. It was a massive game against the New Zealand Breakers where they were coming in as the hottest team in the league with 5 straight wins. The Taipans had won 4 straight, so they were hot on their heels in terms of teams being hot. Turned out to be a really important win for the Taipans and an impressive win, so we'll dissect it shortly. First of all, you were back in the building for the first time in 2020 after missing a couple of games due to your family trip over the holiday period. How was things back in amongst the Orange Army?
Oh, it was great to be back there and see Grabeau's jersey in the rafters. Really cool thing for Grabeau and Spiel that I missed. That opportunity to see him get that honour, and just an awesome thing to see in the Cairns Convention Centre. Finally, the game was huge. The tips companies had it all wrong. The bookies said it was a $3.36. Payoff for New Zealand win and $1.40 for Taipans, and I just felt that it couldn't be further from the truth. I thought it was going to be a tight game, and it was. I predicted an overtime game, Taipans by 4. It wasn't an overtime, but Taipans by 6. But it was a nail biter. A totally different New Zealand Breakers team to a month before. Scotty Hopson for them at the helm, and they really moved the ball well. Rob Lowe had a career night, 24 points, and was the danger man. And all their players were coming together. They were banged up a bit, but with New Zealand losing that game and then losing the next one, dropping 2 is pretty much the dagger for them. And them being banged up, I think that's curtains for the New Zealand Breakers season. But credit to the Taipans, they held strong, and Scott Machado, 29 points. Oh my goodness. Big chance for MVP from the crowd. Interestingly, Mike Kelly saying he's toning it down. He's like, no. He's like, let it. We're thinking the wrong things here, crowd. We're thinking we want to keep things normal. Like just be quiet. Like let's think about that later. Let's not get distracted. Let's not get distracted with things that don't matter right now. But I think Scotty Machado quite enjoyed it at the free throw line, hearing the
he did miss one of them.
Chant. He did miss one of them, but it does bring up an interesting question. I think that we're more than happy to talk about Pikey. Bit of an MVP race. I think he is the best point guard in the league, no question. I have doubts about if he would actually be MVP, but I look further into a few of the numbers. 16 points a game, 8 assists. The next, the hottest player based on the bookies is Bryce Cotton, 22 points a game, 3 assists, but an absolute gun down the stretch of a game to close out. Scotty Machado a little bit gun shy, I shouldn't say gun shy, but not as confident from 3 in terms of how defenses will play him, but he's still racked up 29 points to get them the win and also lead all the other players to victory there at the helm. So he's coming in pretty hot. If he continues to close out this season, I think he's got just as good a chance as anyone for MVP. And will they buck the trend and go for the guy that doesn't have as many points, but certainly got everyone else on the team going and made the team a lot better because of his presence. Is that the MVP that they're going to choose for this year, Pikey?
It's a fascinating question, and I do think it's now down to those two. I think it's down to Scotty Machado and Bryce Cotton. You can take a look at some of the other guys around the league, and I don't think Sean Long is probably has been quite as good as those two. I don't think Jerome Randle or Daniel Johnson at Adelaide are at that level. I don't think as good as Lamar Patterson can be on his night. I don't think he's consistent enough to be in calculation. So I think it's genuinely down to those two. Take your pick.
The team has to perform. The team has to perform and get top sort of 2 or 3. Interestingly, no one from the Kings is like highly ranked, but how strong is that no one's in MVP contention? Casper Ware, yes, but he's a bit further off, but the whole team is pulling together. They don't have a standout single candidate, which makes them super tough. But in terms of purely for MVP, there's certainly going to be an interesting talk around Machado and Bryce Cotton. Who have you got for MVP? If you're going to choose those two on your team, who's the most important player for your team out of those two?
Oh, that's a tough one. I guess the only reason I would say Bryce is because I think Scotty is better when he's got good players around him that can benefit from his good work. So if you're Bryce Cotton, you can create your own shot. You can probably play a one-on-one game and be absolutely incredible, and you could hit shots from anywhere and make your own shots. Whereas as good as Scotty can be as a scorer, I think he's an even better passer. So he doesn't need good players around him because he can play well on his own, but he's better when he's got good players around him, like a DJ Newell, like a Cam Oliver, who can benefit from his great work to pass the ball to him. So that's the only reason, if I'm picking one player, that I might tip Bryce in that sense. But in terms of MVP voting, I'm going to go for Machado just because of how much better I think he's made the Cairns Taipans, and I think they're probably finishing bottom of the table again if they don't have him, and if they don't have somebody equal in terms of making people better around him. So in terms of being most valuable, I think the difference between sitting third and sitting last makes you a pretty valuable player, and I think being able to make your teammates better is a massive thing. And as good as Bryce is, maybe you're not so much getting better by being around him, but you might win more games just by having his individual brilliance on your team. So, I mean, you're not going to lose out too much by having him on your team either. But, yeah, right now I think Machado would be my tip for MVP just because of how much better he's made everybody else at the Taipans.
It's funny, there's sort of two trains of thought. In a late game situation, your superstar should carry you, obviously, to the promised land. And Bryce Cotton is an absolute dagger. He's taken them to, dazzling heights these last few years. He came in that last part of the season. He got them the championship. Like the Wildcats paid for it, and Bryce Cotton delivered. And he's did it again last season. He's an absolute juggernaut. And for me, I think that the MVP is the most sort of lethal kind of candidate that can take over a game. In the Sydney game, they went under the screen. They're baiting Machado to shoot a 3. I don't think he's as confident shooting that 3 ball where it's going to be an absolute weapon down the stretch of a playoff series. So I do worry that, teams will sort of really hone into how Sydney played them. The Taipans haven't been shooting well from the 3. That home game was their worst 3-point percentage all season. And, the Sydney game wasn't much better. I'm not sure exactly on the numbers, but that could possibly be the one sort of downfall of this Taipans unit, how teams adjust and really kind of play the numbers, especially when you're playing back-to-back games in a series game. So it's hard. Scotty makes any team in this league a lot better. So in that way, he is an absolute massive player and would be a dream teammate in any club. And he'll certainly be worth a lot for next season. Should any NBL club be keen to poach a player like Scotty Machado, they can already sense the combinations if they secure him. Bryce Cotton is an absolute killer. You certainly want him on your grand final series playing team, giving you the final sort of dagger shot that's going to take you to the championship rings ceremony. So, look, it's tough. I'm going to go for Bryce. I'm saying that Bryce is MVP, but I'm saying Scotty's right there. But we'll see what happens.
Let me ask the question in a different way. If you're a pick and pop power forward type player, which one would you rather be playing alongside?
Scotty Machado. Oh, 100%. 100%. Scotty Machado is head and shoulders, activates the entire team, and it just makes everyone's job better for everyone's contracts better for the next season. It's an absolute dream situation to have a point guard of his skill be at the helm. So he's an absolute weapon to have on any club.
Let me ask you about his teammate in the backcourt, DJ Newbill, as well. We had a great chat with him when you caught up with him on a previous edition of the Pikey and Loughz Show, which you can check out in the archives, where he was very happy when you introduced him as coming from Newbillville. But to me, he's probably leading the race for the Defensive Player of the Year award right now. I don't think either Andrew Bogut or Damien Martin have been the defensive, forces that they have in previous seasons. But to me, the way DJ's locking down on all of the best guards in the league right now has to have him in that race. So if the Taipans end up facing the Wildcats down the track, would you back him in to be able to at least limit the impact of Bryce Cotton to some degree?
Well, absolutely. I think the Taipans have had no trouble disposing of the Wildcats and in two of the games for sure. So I think I think it would be an interesting matchup. I think where the Wildcats would sort of change their tactics a bit is obviously defensively, baiting the Taipans to shoot more threes and clogging the paint and basically not letting Oliver get some easy catch and shoot. They'll probably go under picks. They'll play the percentages. I think that everything will change once the playoffs hit. So the Taipans have got to basically be going, we're not going to get ourselves going by launching threes, being baited into launching threes and getting going that way. We've got to stick to our guns. We've got to do all the little things and get to the rack. And that comes off some pretty aggressive play. DJ and Scotty Machado leading the way on that. So it's going to be an interesting. But you got to get to the playoffs first.
For sure.
Got to get to the playoffs first, and what a luxury it is for the Wildcats just to be able to afford the services of Plumlee. I'm not sure what that price tag comes in at. I know he's still getting paid out, probably 12 mil from NBA clubs. Yeah. So he's sitting around doing nothing, and it's just chump change. But it's still something that I'd say was in the realm of I'm only speculating here, but probably 200 to 300k, just a bit of spare change, and how nice is it for Derry Hunt just to move aside, just to allow Plumlee to just slot right in. This really is a skewed league, isn't it?
Absolutely. Ever since we went to the soft salary cap, where if you had the money, you could spend over the salary cap, and there's really nothing stopping you from doing that. I think we've seen the league really change from. It's made it a lot harder for the smaller clubs like a Taipans, like a Hawks and even an Adelaide 36ers to compete. But at the same time, it also means when you are successful, it probably means a lot more because you know what you're up against, and you probably put targets on the heads of the Sydneys and the Melbournes and the Perths because you know that they're able to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much as you can on your players. So it can add motivation to you as well. And the Taipans this season have done a terrific job of spending. If I reckon if you take the example of the Kings, they're probably spending a fifth less than what the Kings are in their playing squad, and they've been able to compete with them very well this season. So it's possible. But gee, if you were the Taipans right now, and if you needed to add a backup player, and say it was Courtney who was injured for this period, and there was a small forward who had played 400 NBA games and who'd spent 4 years at Duke University and won an NCAA championship, and you could add him to your squad, it'd be pretty nice. So it's a luxury that Perth has and that Sydney has and Melbourne has that the other clubs in the league don't have. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice problem for them to have, and to me it probably makes them almost championship favourites over the Kings right now, because the one problem the Wildcats had was probably their lack of output, and especially their lack of ability to defend inside the paint. Just because they weren't that big there, all of a sudden that problem's solved, and that's what you can do when, I guess, finances aren't really an issue.
Well, I think the Taipans have 2 or 3 individuals they could lean on outside of the club that would actually make that move as well. And I think that they're more than hungry to make that sort of thing happen. They don't need to do it this year, of course, but in future years when you're in the similar situation, third or second, and then there just needs to be a slight tweak or something, at some point they're going to have to make a call, and someone from the outside who is more than capable will step up and say, look, enough's enough. Let's see what happens here and throw a bit of caution to the wind. But that'll be a strategic play. I don't think we don't not have those individuals. We've certainly got, I can think of 3 or 4 individuals around Cairns. There'll be a time and place for that. But in terms of third place on the ladder, got to get a win against Adelaide. And, all the NBL's talking about this game, Taipans versus Adelaide, is the game of the round.
Well, it absolutely is. If we take a look at it, the Taipans right now, after splitting those games last week against New Zealand and Sydney, they're 12-10. But because of Melbourne's continued struggles, they still stay in third position on the ladder. But they've only got 6 games.
I'm not convinced. I'm just not convinced Melbourne United are able to close out a strong playoff push. Whether or not they don't make the playoffs, I'm not too sure. But I'm not convinced. If they're in the playoffs, they're not going past the first round.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because coming into the season, I don't think we foresaw any of these problems from United. I think a lot of us thought they probably had upgraded on their roster from last season. They'd really only changed their imports, so they had swapped Sean Long for Josh Boone, and defensively they might have lost a little bit, but offensively they gained a hell of a lot. I think in terms of swapping Mello Trimble for Casper Ware, offensively, maybe Mello scores even more points and maybe you give up a little bit defensively, but I think they would have thought if they could score more points, then that won't really be an issue. I guess the one that hasn't quite worked is the loss of DJ Kennedy and obviously Casey Prather, just because of injury, hasn't quite worked. And now they've got Stanton Kidd in the lineup, who has been okay up until their game against Adelaide on the weekend, where he only played 5 minutes because of foul trouble. So they've only really swapped their imports, and they've got the same roster that went to the grand final last season, but nothing's really clicked from the start of the season. They had a bit of a slow start, and I guess we all just assumed that they would be able to get it together, but they just haven't. They've got an 11-10 record right now. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games, and they've got their next 2 on the road this weekend to New Zealand and then on Australia Day to Sydney. So they could easily be 11-12 and be back in 6th spot by in 7 or 8 days' time. What hasn't clicked for them this season from what you've been able to see?
Well, I don't think, I think with Mello Trimble at the helm, I think he's been exposed a little bit in terms of being in that upper level team with superstars around and leading the team forward. He's obviously still very young and, he's going to be growing every year.
But at the same time, that's what he said he wanted. At the same time, that's what he said he wanted. He came out and wasn't shy about saying that's what he wanted to be part of.
Yeah, well, it certainly hasn't been a clean run. I think there's been a lot of sort of head scratching down the stretch, and he's like, how does this all work and get it together? So I think that's probably because it's the most important spot. The point guard position is the most crucial spot. I mean, take a look at Machado. Mature. He controls the team. He controls the tempo. He's calculated. I think Mello's still just his youth maybe exposed in a team that really needed an experienced guard with all the tricks of the trade, and it just hasn't happened for them. I mean, Sean Long's very young and energetic, and in a lot of ways immature as well. You've got a bit of maybe too much youth in those crucial roles. I'd take Sean Long on any team. He's such a threat and such a big body and athletic. But that point guard position is crucial.
Maybe in some ways, as it's now turned out, they underestimated just how important a leader for them Casper Ware was. Maybe they didn't realise just how important he was.
Well, we didn't. I mean, even at Taipans last year, we didn't really get to that upper level at all, or even the middle level where that was even a problem. We were just trying to keep our head above water for a lot of those games there. I mean, a lot of those, I think 11 or 12 games were single-digit losses. So we were just trying to make it through to get some wins on the board. But this year and the pressure in Melbourne certainly has changed the landscape for Mello, and I think it'd be a huge learning curve. But I don't think they've got the right mindset and confidence in place to do anything in the playoff. Now,
moving on from Melbourne to, I guess, from a team that the Taipans have done so well against.
And the players' body language doesn't show it either. The players' body language in Melbourne does not show confidence and trust in everyone on the floor. So that's pretty clear.
Absolutely, and it's a team that the Taipans have done really well against, beating them all 3 times so far. But one team that the Taipans haven't done well against is the Illawarra Hawks, who 3 of their 5 wins for the season have come against the Taipans. There's another game to come on the 31st of January in Cairns as well. So hopefully the Taipans can get one of those wins back on that occasion. But you've been saying this for 2 months now, Loughz, and it's official now that LaMelo Ball has played his last game for the Hawks. He hasn't played a game since November 30, but you've been saying from even before that he wasn't long for this league, and we all expect him to still be the number one draft pick and to go on to have probably an incredible NBA career. But for all the good that he did for the NBL in the first half of the season, we've officially now seen the last of him.
Did Loughzy call it, or did Loughzy call it?
You called it before anybody.
On the 9th of November, sitting on the socials, and he just got the win over the Taipans, 24 points, and Loughzy's like, nah, there is no way he is playing after Christmas. He'll be enjoying Christmas dinner with his family, and he will not step foot back on the court after that. Pack him up, wrap him up in cotton wool. He's ready for the draft. There's too much at stake. Lo and behold, Christmas happens, and okay, there's a bit of an injury. Got to be careful, got to be cautious. Yeah, I get it. But then Loughzy's intuition kicks in, and now we have no more LaMelo Ball. Why do I not have money on these things?
I have to say, you called it. I didn't hear anybody even mentioning it by the time you called it. You were way ahead of the curve on it, and I think you deserve all the credit in the world. I don't know if you can get any money in hindsight because of it, but you do deserve the credit for calling it before anybody. Do you still think it's been a big win for him to still be coming to the league, and has it been a win for the NBL? I guess overall?
Oh, it's 100% been a win for LaMelo Ball and a win for the league.
Yep.
And conversely, RJ Hampton is not as happy a camper as LaMelo Ball. And I hear whispers RJ Hampton's dad is furious because in the contract talks, he's guaranteed a starting position and 20 minutes a game. He just came off an injury over the course of the last month, hence why the scouts were checking out the Taipans New Zealand game, which actually had a pretty good game. He had a bit of an impact, but didn't get his 20 minutes or something as previously agreed on. So two situations there. That camp is not happy. The Ball camp is very happy. He's done what he's had to do. So I think it's a good. I guess it's a good mix. You've got the option of potentially propelling yourself as a next star, propelling yourself to number one in the draft, and the NBL is a great platform for that. Or you could take the risk and not perform or not get the chances or whatever excuse you want to say, and you get knocked back to 20th in the draft, which he'll still go in the first round, of course, RJ Hampton, but just the impact that they were hoping for is not there. So I mean, LaMelo Ball, the reason why I said before that he's going to pack up, shut up shop, because late in the season each team's played each other 3 or 4 times, then you've really scouted the bejesus out of each team. So you're going to either throw a double team. He's one of the best passers, second best passer in the league, 7 assists. Machado on 8 assists, of course. Yep. So he's going to find his way out of double teams, but there's going to be more pressure and less opportunity because teams are going to go, right, well, we're going to let you pass it to 27% shooter from the corner there. We'll see if he can make a few threes. So one, the defense adjusts, so there's not much you can really do after you've played each other 3 or 4 times. Second, you can get injured and your stocks go way down and your money goes way down. It's just not worth the risk. It's just all things point to, look, you've got your stock as high as possible. You just came off those 2 triple doubles, mate. It's time to shut up shop. The league's understandably a little bit agitated that he's sort of kind of bailing and not doing some interviews and not doing this and that. But at the end of the day, the big picture is what a massive success the move has been from the NBL to bring in and install the Next Stars program. They'll be riding the coattails, whether or not there's a little bit of agitation on those lack of interest for interviews that LaMelo Ball's not giving to local media around the country. That'll be a small blip in the scheme of things. So it's pretty impressive. The numbers I think are pretty impressive. The international eyeballs, pretty impressive. And thank goodness, it's probably bad to say, but thank goodness Brooks went down with an injury at the start because he was carrying the bulk of the points for Hawks and perhaps nullifying LaMelo Ball's impact or opportunity. So
I'm not sure he ends up with those triple doubles if Brooks is still playing.
Well, I mean, the crystal ball can't sort of predict everything, and a player has to jump at the chances and opportunities as they come. Look at Sean Bruce with Kevin Lish out. He's, relishing playing. He's got raving reviews of Coach Will Weaver, and just amazed at how much trust and just happiness he has playing for a coach that allows him to make mistakes and play through them. And, it's so empowering. So different situations happen. The good players, the prepared players are ready to make the most of it. Look, LaMelo Ball's definitely got the skill. Sean Bruce definitely had the skill and has the skill and the eagerness to push forward, and he's done himself a great service this year. So both situations, the quality is in the player making the most of the situation. So, hats off to LaMelo Ball and all the best for the draft night on June 22nd.
Now, I don't think there's any doubt that the league has benefited from it, and it's going to benefit from the years going forward, because potential draftees are going to want to come and play in the NBL now, and it's going to be seen as a genuine destination, and I think LaMelo's obviously benefited from it. But my question is, have the Hawks and have the Breakers benefited from having those players part of the team? I think you can write the Breakers off of the playoffs now. So they're the two teams that can't make the playoffs right now, and they're fighting over the wooden spoon. So have the clubs themselves benefited from having those players part of their team?
I think you sign up the risk. Hawks had nothing to lose. They signed up the risk. It was either going to be a circus or it was going to be what it is now.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it hasn't helped the club get to playoff sort of thing, but they won some games that maybe they shouldn't have. New Zealand Breakers, they sort of got I think RJ Hamden's a lot more of a team player, and almost, I think he's pretty handy. I think he's shown some really good signs in a lot of those games there, but just a quality sort of team player who was announced he was prepared to stay the length of the season and commit and do all those, those good things. So maybe that's been his downfall compared to LaMelo Ball not being as selfish. Mm-hmm. But why are they here? They're here to boost their stock numbers, not sort of make up the numbers and be a good team guy. So I don't know. It's sort of, I think you pick those next stars guys. If you lower down, I think it's too risky for the Taipans to, if they go with the next star player and he ends up being a circus, like the season's done.
Yep.
Like the lower budget sort of teams that don't have the cash to splash need security. I think they showed this year that through good quality experienced players that have been around the traps a bit, been to Europe and on the cusp of NBA, like that's the kind of pond we want to be fishing in. I think New Zealand had a new coach, new sort of thing. Probably everything's a bit new. The NBA owner, Matt Walsh, looking to probably got starry-eyed with some figures and things based on what could be with a superstar, next star kind of player. So I don't know how he would rate the season. They've had a bit of a tumultuous year, so I don't know where to start with New Zealand. So but I don't know. Then then Sydney, on the other hand, pretty solid core, pretty solid unit. Just added a little top-up of an ex-star in Lazada, and he's had a pretty great season, and added to already an established kind of squad. So I think that's probably more the calculated approach from those bigger budget teams. I just think the lower budget teams, if they want any chance at really securing a playoff, it's going to be on working hard and having players like the trio that the Taipans have this year.
And then you have the Phoenix, who have had a complete bust in Terry Armstrong, who I don't think, if you mention the Next Stars program, I don't think anyone even realises that he's part of it. He's been so far off the radar all season, and he's basically been a waste of effort for the Phoenix to bring him in.
Yeah, and obviously they let go of their other import as well, that Keith.
Benson.
Yeah. I actually hadn't even heard even the next name mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Until.
That was my point.
So I guess that's the game. You're rolling the dice. It's not really any skin off the team's budget. It's just paying for room and board, and the NBL covers the dollars. So it's basically a $50,000 outlay for the risk reward. So anyway,
let's get back to this Taipans talk.
This episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show proudly brought to you by Cairns Total Physio. Less pain, more life.
So there was some good news this week in terms of some recognition for both Kawat and for Mirko Jeric, who have been named in the Boomer squad to play against New Zealand in the fever break at the end of the season. There's a game in Brisbane. I think it's on February 20. Great news for both of those guys to get an opportunity as part of the squad.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a great time in a young player's life to I've been to many camps and the vibe is awesome. You just you're enjoying playing at a different level, and the coaches that you're enemies against during the NBL season, all of a sudden they're there to help. They're there to kind of bring Australia team together, and it's a really good camaraderie type situation. So for all those young guys to get an opportunity, obviously, Will Weaver stepping in for Brett Brown is a great move. He's no stranger to the Boomers lineup. He's been assistant coach for many campaigns with Brett Brown and Adam Capon alongside. Great to see CJ Bruton get a call up as well. So it's got some. It's obviously very young. Our good friend Boddy Naj in Adelaide is not convinced, but I think that time slot, that sort of window, is really only for a great chance for the younger players to get a taste and to sort of bring them up through the ranks and see who can sort of really relish the opportunity. So it's obviously not a your mature A grade squad that everyone else has got to be a bit careful with which players they release, but it's certainly a massive coup for those young guys, and great for Kawat as well, just to get the taste of the Australia team stuff. He would have been in the junior teams as well. I would imagine coming into, but yeah, great. It's a senior side. It's for all intents and purposes, it's representing Australia in the national men's team. It's the senior side, so it's it's a huge feather in the cap.
Well, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Once you're a Boomer, you're a Boomer. And I remember this time last year speaking to Tim Conrad, and he had just finished his season at the Hawks. They hadn't made the playoffs, and he'd pretty much conceded that he wouldn't play for Australia at any level by that point in his career, but he got a call up for, I think it was a trip to Iran, and it might have been Kazakhstan, and ended up being one of the highlights of his life. Yeah, no,
it's a fantastic opportunity. Really happy for those two, the Taipans guys. So can't wait to see how that little window unfolds, and plenty of action even while the NBL just has a slight breather before playoffs.
Now, when you were playing, Loughz, did you take much notice of the jerseys you were wearing? Were you a fan when you would wear one-off jerseys like the NBL's introduced this year? We've had a Looney Tunes round, we've had the City round, and now next week we'll have the Indigenous round. Did you take much notice of what was on your chest?
It was pretty cool to mix it up a bit from the usual orange which we wore. Game in, game out. It's always good to mix it up with some different colours and things. The Looney Tunes one is a little bit out there. I think that's a bit of Justin Kesselman's playing ground. I love Looney Tunes, don't get me wrong, but not sure if it quite fits. Now the Indigenous round does fit. Yeah. It's perfect for the league to recognise and a lot of Indigenous players around the league, and just really cool to have, and led by Paddy Mills' comments last year. I think it was on the way, but he certainly brought a lot of attention to bringing in the Indigenous round. So it's just a great thing to see. And Nate Jowie, obviously the Taipans, raring to go. I could see pictures of his of the Taipans Indigenous round jersey, and it's not this round though, is it? It's going to be next round, I believe.
Yep, next week.
But yeah, I really loved all the different. It's good to have the mix up, to be honest. And great memories if you can, as a player, retain a lot of the jerseys and the memories that go along with it.
Well, as a player, do you keep a lot of your jerseys that you played in? Have you got a lot in your collection at home?
Oh, 100%. And I've got two different boxes. One stays in Perth and one stays in Cairns, just in case, in Luke Longley's case, the fire that tore down his house. He lost all of his Chicago Bulls memorabilia and things like that. Michael Jordan sent him a care package of replica things like even the bench seat it has the Chicago Bulls logos and things like all that went in Luke Longley's fire, and I think the only thing that was he had left was the rings that were in a safe.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they are precious. They are your memories and your stories of your players. You relish all the jerseys that you get and hold on to them with a fierce monkey grip. You won't be able to prize the jerseys away from me. No, it's really cool and really special.
All right, let's get down to business. Let's look at Saturday night's game, Cairns Convention Centre. The Taipans playing the Adelaide 36ers. Right now, the Taipans are third at 12 and 10. Adelaide are fifth at 11 and 11. So there's precious little between the two teams. They've played a couple of pretty good games already this season as well, and we've seen that there's not much between them. Both teams have won on their home floors so far. What are you expecting from this on Saturday night? And let's put it into perspective. How important is it in the context of the season for both clubs?
Well, it's the biggest game of the season for both clubs.
Yeah.
It's got huge ramifications, as we've touched on earlier. Joey Wright has perfected the run and gun style game. He's done it every year, and they're really good at it. They're really good at just that energy and pace. Eric Griffin's been great around the rim. So it's a track meet. It's basically you put your running shoes on and you expect to go a bunch of 100-metre sprints. So the Taipans got to control the tempo on this one. They really got to go, we're playing the game on our terms. We're not just going to get lulled into this huff and puff run and gun type style. So the flip side for me is that Adelaide traditionally you get them playing defense for over 8 seconds and the cracks start to appear.
Yep.
They don't want to get it to 8 seconds. They just want to force you into turnovers and take off to the races. So Taipan's got a big job in controlling the tempo. Now, if I look at the Taipans, they took Noi down to Sydney but didn't play him. I'm saying that they've bought an extra 4 or 5 days of recovery so that Noi's energy and influence can be unleashed against the Adelaide team, and hopefully he's ready and raring to go, because they'll need his energy to cancel out probably a bit of Eric Griffin in there.
Yeah, Eric Griffin.
And a lot of just the way that Adelaide play, a lot of their players crashing the glass and getting off and running. So I'm not 100% sure if he'll play. I'm assuming he will, though. So Taipans, look, it's going to be a close one. It's going to be an absolute nail biter. I think I've gone with the Taipans by 2 or 3, but it's going to go down to the wire. Just the desperation needs to be there from the Taipans for full 4 quarters. No sort of lulls, no being cutesy with the ball. No, this is lock in, get it done, no matter what kind of game.
You've mentioned Eric Griffin a couple of times. To me, he could be the player that decides this game because of his athleticism, his ability to get to the rim, and just he can do things that I don't think anyone else in the league can do. He's got that NBA type athleticism. Now, I'm concerned about Cam Oliver getting in foul trouble trying to defend him. That's my biggest concern, because once Cam gets in foul trouble, there's not a lot behind him in terms of the bigs for the Taipans. So how do we try to make sure that Griffin doesn't have much of an influence? Getting him into foul trouble might be a start. Yeah,
well, that could be, he could be Frisky McGee and ready to put the salad tongs in there and get a couple of fouls, as our good friend Trigger would say. I think Oliver's been down a bit on confidence in the last couple of games. I think he will have a good chance to refresh this week and refocus and do the things that he does well. That's the thing. If you're not a 3-point shooter, like a pure shooter or anything, you're not going to worry if they don't go in. You do your bread and butter the best you can. In Cam's case, he's come a long way. At the start of the season, he would lose a bit of concentration on his player, Sean Long, I'm thinking of, who would, went to town on the boards in first quarters. You've got to do your work early, but it takes concentration. I mean, Cam Oliver's used to out-jumping his opponent 4-man, but he's been playing at the 5 spot. So Eric Griffin's quite long, quite athletic, probably got a few hands length more on Oliver. So I'd say that athletic-wise, Griffin would have him. So Cam's got to really focus in and do his footwork early to box out these guys, and just keep them off the rim. Hey, if you've got to sacrifice yourself and let someone else get the boards, so be it. You just take out their most crucial threat on the glass. So you've got to be cagey, though, because as the tension goes up, the refs' tension is also going. They're sitting there going, "This is a big game. Like, we better call something. We better put our stamp on the game as well." Hopefully, they don't go too overboard and just get whistle happy and call too many fouls. But they understand that it's an important one as well. So I think it's about keeping your hands out, using all the boring behaviour techniques to do your work early, and just put a body on someone and make it clean so the refs don't sit you on the bench with a couple of fouls early.
Now, the point guard battle to me looks mouth-watering as well, with Jerome, Randle and Scotty Machado. At the defensive end, would you be tempted to put DJ onto Jerome, or would you be happy to trust Scotty to go one-on-one with him at both ends?
Well, why not rest Machado on the defensive end?
Yep.
DJ's not going to have the foot speed by any means, so to keep in front of Randle. So I don't know how that'll play out for too many possessions, but I think Scotty's going to be quicker than DJ just up and down the floor.
Yep.
But when guarding Randle, it's a team effort. It's not one player going, "Yep, I'm going to guard him from the backcourt." He's just too quick.
Yeah.
I think you've got to steer the ball to. Hopefully, there's a non-shooter on the floor for Adelaide, so someone can clog up the paint and then just get late to a closeout. But yeah, Jerome's tough, man. Like he's that dynamic. He's pretty much guaranteed going to get his 20 a game and. Maybe down the stretch, you might have to throw a few different things at him, but in trans, he's just, this game's quick. This game's, quick. They're going to need, Mike Kelly's going to need to have rotations coming through that are ready to roll. He's going to need every bit of Noi this game. He's going to need Fab to maybe take a few foul hits if like you said, Cam Oliver gets in a bit of foul trouble as well. But this is going to be a fast-paced game.
Just one more question about it. Now, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but a win for the Taipans would mean that they now sit 13-10. Now, it's not quite at the win total you've been talking about all season to cement anything, but how close does a win on Saturday night go to cementing a playoff spot?
The thing is that there's still 4 games to play on the road.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, 4 out of the last 5.
4 tough games on the road. That's why they need this home win more than anything, because they need to get 2 on the road out of the 4. So yeah, if you drop this one, it's you've got to really hustle and get a third one on the road out of 4. So it's going to be tough closing out 75% games when on the trot is tough in any situation, let alone when all the teams are facing pressure, especially I think there's a Brisbane game in there.
Yeah, there is.
As well. So man, it's going to be crazy. So yeah, strap yourself in.
I think the last game is against Brisbane. Yeah, February 15.
Oh, is that
the last game?
The away game?
Yeah,
that's
it is in Brisbane.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about with Adelaide? Would you be willing to say that they're playoff bound if they can come to Cairns and get that win?
I think it would certainly go a long way. I think it's going to be touch and go round by round, especially the way this thing's looking like it's finishing up. I'm not convinced Adelaide have the team confidence, and they haven't shown it this year to where they can be totally playoff sort of. I just don't think they can get past the first round either if they make it into the playoffs. They're just like Melbourne. They're just too inconsistent. I mean, Taipans have been inconsistent early in the season, and I wasn't too sure, but their last sort of stretch, the way they've been finishing these last sort of 14 games, it's been a lot more convincing. Adelaide has still been inconsistent, so they're there. I mean, they're right there, Adelaide. But if they snag this win, maybe they can all get it together at the last minute. But I'm not convinced that they've shown consistency enough to go deep in the playoffs.
Now, you're not convinced about Melbourne. You're not convinced about Adelaide. That's just assume, and that's hope that the Taipans do end up making the playoffs. Which team ends up taking that 4th spot? Is it Melbourne? Is it Adelaide? Is it Brisbane? Is it even the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix? Who would you be willing to back at this point?
I don't think it's going to be Phoenix. Yep. Is Brisbane on the rise? Ooh, I mean, we'll see. I don't think they're sure of themselves that they know what they're running. So it could be. It could basically be it's either Melbourne United limping in, or it's an unconvincing Adelaide taking out 4th.
Yeah.
with all the hoo-ha and rah that they bring to each of their games, sort of a false energy thing from an audio level. They yell and scream and carry on in the warm-ups and, have this sort of facade when they do their warm-ups and things. So, I'm not fooled by that.
Well, just touching on that, when you're an opposition player, do you look at that and feel like it's forced by an opposition team, or how do you look at it as an opponent?
Well, I mean, they might look at a fist pump as being over the top. It's whatever the player. One of their players is obviously steering. It's possibly a Drimmick type character.
Oh, McVeigh.
That's just McVeigh. Sorry, he's high energy as well. Like, they just need an outlet. So, they might think it comes across or whatever. Or it might not have any intention at all, but there's just an outburst of energy that that goes along with them. So the players on the other side of the court aren't swayed by that. I mean, and if anyone knows Adelaide, it's going to be Majok Deng.
Yep.
So he's can easily rally the troops and have any sort of insights or whatever. But no, it's just every team to their own. Whatever it is to get them going is what they will do.
Last thing on the game. You've been pretty vocal from the stands at times this season. If Brendan Tees pulls off a flop, as he's been noted to in recent weeks, have you got something in mind that you might hurl his way?
No. I believe it or not, I do respect Tees because, he's certainly put together a career. He's been captain and he's, done the hard yards for the athletic gifts that he's been given. So I think he's pretty remarkable. He's been there all these years and putting in hard work, and I think he's well respected by his club. But yeah, I'm certainly not a fan of a flop on any team.
Well, let's be honest, you weren't immune to them yourself at times.
Yeah. Well, I think you just feel like you barely even graze a guy, and he's gone on the floor. You're like, come on, man, seriously. But he's got to use whatever angle he's got. So yeah, we'll see what happens. The crowd won't have a bar of it. I can already sense Alan in the front row behind the bench or near the bench, opposition bench. He'll be all over it. I trust Alan to take care of the vocals on that one if that happens.
This episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show proudly brought to you by Cairns Total Physio. Less pain, more life.
We haven't mentioned this for a while. Jared Kenny's mullet it's more and more impressive every time we see it. It's now just into legendary territory, isn't it?
It's got to be 20 centimetres. We might get a reading for the listeners for the next podcast.
Absolutely. Now, all of this has been all about Saturday night. It's a massive game. You've tipped the Taipans to win by 2 or 3 points. Let's be honest, it doesn't matter how much they win by as long as they win. It's a massive game. Let's get a full Cairns Convention Centre again, because once there's 5,000 people in that building, it's really tough for an opposition to come in and play. So there's no reason for you to not to be there on Saturday night. Let's hope that everyone's there. Let's hope for another Taipans win. Been another Pikey and Loughz show. We've been talking Taipans. What can you leave us with, Loughz?
Mate, it's a Saturday night. Let's raise the roof. The 5,000 plus fans will be there in the building. So if you don't want to miss out, make sure you get to the Cairns Convention Centre and get the boys over the line. They're gonna need every bit of everyone in Cairns to really pump them up, and let's hope we get a win there and march into those road games and hopefully close out the season strong.